They did some good things, too. They improved an offensive line. That should be better. They've got a lot more stability on the O-line. Right tackle Titus Howard. Left guard Max Sharping, last year's draft picks. They both played well. And obviously they had Laramie Tunsil. Got him from Miami. They also got Kenny Stills from Miami as well. And that'll hopefully help keep Watson from getting sacked 100 times or however many times he got sacked. I think it was 62. As for the rest of the offense, Deshaun Watson is evolving into an elite NFL quarterback, but I don't know if that's going to be good enough this year to be able to get them another division win and a trip to the playoffs. Obviously, I don't think that it's good enough to get them a division win because I have the Titans winning the division. He got rid of his go-to receiver, so it'll be rough to see him transition, and fans have a right to be sort of furious with him. His protection has improved, which is really good. But he does have weapons, too, which, people are ignoring that fact because of the fact that they lost 2 starting running backs and DeAndre Hopkins. Okay. They re-signed Darren Fells, who is a really underrated tight end. They got David Johnson, who was at one point in his career, very early in his career as a rookie, one of, if not the best running back in the entire league. We know he has the talent. Now, obviously, they tried to replace DeAndre Hopkins with a combination of Randall Cobb and Brandon Cooks, and that's not going to work, but look at their receiving core. They've got Brandon Cooks, who has now been on the Saints, the Patriots, the Rams, and the Texans, and in his days with the Rams, Patriots, and Saints, he has been a 1,000-yard receiver every year. So this is going to be a reliable guy, most likely, assuming he can learn the playbook that he's going to be able to throw to. When healthy, Will Fuller is an insane wide receiver. Randall Cobb is a veteran slot receiver, and he's going to be a great presence there for Watson to throw to. This is the strength of their team, at least on paper. The litany of receivers for Watson. The litany of receivers for Deshaun Watson. He has options. All right, he's going to be able to throw the ball. He doesn't have a DeAndre Hopkins, but he has options, and he has weapons. There's too much talent on this offense for them to fall off the face of the planet. On defense, they still have J.J. Watt, but he's injury-prone. They lost their nose tackle, DJ Reader, who went to Cincinnati. Watt needs to stay healthy for them to be successful. That's one of the big things. He's so injury-prone, and last year the defense was pretty terrible. They finished 28th overall, 25th against the run, 29th against the pass. But their weakness is definitely their pass rush outside of J.J. Watt. Secondary is also just okay. They got Vernon Hargraves in the secondary, who's a really solid. Bradley Roby's a great corner as well. But overall, this is, I would say, an average defense right now. And the fact that they lost so many pieces over the offseason leads me to believe that they are actually not going to make the playoffs this year. I'm predicting an 8-8 finish. Not good enough to make the playoffs. Now, I think that due to the fact that Bill O'Brien's no longer calling plays and they have talent, plenty of talent on paper, I think they could make a deep run in the playoffs next year, but I'm not expecting this to be the year for Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans to come together. 8-8 for me. They miss the playoffs. Let's move on to the last team in the AFC South, the Jacksonville Jaguars. And before we jump into the Jaguars, let's look at them for a second. Every year, this division is a battle to the bitter end. This is pretty much how the division plays out every year. The Texans grind out a 10-win season. The Titans and the Colts fight for, 8-8 or 9-7, and sometimes one of them gets a wild card spot. And the Jaguars can never break 6 wins. That's literally what happens every year. I probably should have brought this up in the beginning. But this literally happens every year. Honestly, go and look at every year over the past decade in the AFC South, and that's what's going to happen. It's always competitive through week 16, 17, but the Texans always end up getting 10 wins, the Titans and Colts 8-8 or 9-7. That being said, there was one anomaly. Back in 2017, that random 2017 season, when the Jaguars went 10-6, they put up 45 points on the Steelers, and Blake Bortles looked like Dan Marino. They were literally 2 plays away from making the Super Bowl. Every other season, In the past decade, the Jaguars have finished 6-10 or worse, except for that random 2017 year where they almost went to the Super Bowl. That is such a weird stat. What happened to that team? It was such a weird team. They had a great defense and a really good offense, a 45-point in the playoff type offense. Jaguars have been terrible, and this is not going to be another sort of anomaly 10-6 year. They're going back to being bad. So, what are we looking at for the Jaguars? Well, we're looking at their weakness here. I'm just going to say right off the bat is their lack of talent. I know that's not really that nice to say, but they are not a good football team on paper or by the eye test. The Minshew experiment. Okay, let's start at quarterback. Gardner Minshew was all right. 285 completions, 470 attempts, about 61% completion percentage, almost 3,300 yards, about 234 yards per game, and then 21 touchdowns and 6 picks. He also had about close to 350 yards on the ground. He was solid, like not great, but solid. And teams are going to start to figure him out. He's not going to be like an incredible quarterback this year. He's a character, which is great for PR, but not so good for winning Super Bowls. And that's obviously what every team in the NFL is trying to do. If you can think back to week 1, I think it was against the Chiefs, Gardner Minshew completed 88% of his passes, and that set the record for the most accurate single-game passing passing record in Jaguars history with a minimum of 25 attempts. He was accurate and he was good, and that's where Minshew Mania started. Right at the beginning of the year, everybody loved him. They loved the character he was. They loved his facial hair. They loved everything about him, except for the fact that he was sort of an average quarterback, and people seem to forget that. He had some nice plays, and he's a solid NFL quarterback, but the rest of this team is just not good enough. I'm sorry. But the highest single-game pass completion percentage in Jaguars history is good. Yeah. So, the receiving core is good. D.D. Westbrook and DJ Chark have insane potential. DJ Chark is fast, big, he can jump, and he is trouble for defenders. This guy's starting to figure it out, and everybody should be petrified. Obviously, Leonard Fournette, if he can get past his injury troubles, has a lot of potential as well, and he's proven himself. He's a proven commodity, too. They added a couple of pieces. They added Chris Thompson, who's going to be a nice change of pace back. He came over from Washington, formerly the Redskins, now the Washington football team. And they also added Tyler Eifert, who came over from the Cincinnati Bengals. So you get a change of pace back in Chris Thompson that can play successfully and catch passes out of the backfield behind Leonard Fournette. And they get a big guy who can run routes. He's going to be a target for Minshew, a safety blanket, if you will, in Tyler Eifert. So, it's an offense, but it's not a good offense. I don't care what you think of Gardner Minshew, but people look at him and they forget that this is not a very good football team. He's cool, I guess, but he's not a great quarterback. And he doesn't have the talent around him to be able to be successful. Now, Laviska Shenault is another story. Wide receiver out of Colorado, drafted in the second round. And I'm not necessarily talking about the potential that this guy has. I mean, he's going to be good. I think that he could be a sneaky late-round fantasy football draft pick. And when you look at the guy, he has all the makings of a guy that could honestly be the best out of his draft class, which is really interesting to me because this was such a stacked draft class. But he can do it all. He's got size. He can pose as a sort of a backfield threat in certain packages. He can catch the ball in the screen game. He can break tackles, gain yards after contact. He's a raw route runner, and he's not like super fast, but he's very physical, and he can be a gimmick player, and he's got upside. He's got upside. But that's not even what I'm talking about. Laviska Shenault sounds like one of the names that Key and Peele would have used in their East-West Bowl sketches, if anybody remembers that. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go look it up. Laviska Shenault is such a fun name to say. It sounds like it could be like a brand of candy or like some sort of intergalactic name. Maybe like a planet or something. I don't know. This guy's got potential, but he's very raw, and he's not going to get there yet. But he does have a fun name to say, so Key and Peele, take note. That's the offense. And you guys remember when the defense used to be really good? Yeah, I remember those days. Well, now they have a few good pieces that have sort of started to trail off. Miles Jack is still a solid linebacker. You got Josh Allen and Yannick Ngakoue on the defensive line, holding down the edges there. The secondary isn't that great anymore. But it's not really that great of a football team. And there's nobody on the team that's going to put them over the top. They've got to stay healthy to be able to be competitive. But here's my prediction for the Jaguars. 2-14. They're not getting anything done. But Laviska Shenault is a fun name to say. Even though the Jaguars will finish 2-14 and be the worst team in the NFL. Yeah. Laviska Shenault. Isn't that fun? All right. That's the AFC South. Let's move on to the AFC West.